What if I told you that your fingertips carry one of the strangest records of your entire life? A pattern that begins forming before you are even born. Every person has them, almost every finger is covered with them, and no two people have exactly the same pattern. But why? Why did humans evolve these tiny lines on their fingertips, and why have they survived for millions of years? The answer is far more surprising than simply saying they help identify us. Long before fingerprints became evidence in crime scenes, passports, phones, and security systems, they were already doing something much more important. They were helping your ancestors survive. Imagine an ancient human trying to climb a wet rock after rain, gripping a wooden spear, carrying food, or climbing through a dangerous forest. Their hands had to do something incredibly difficult: hold onto objects without constantly slipping. And this is where those strange little patterns on our fingertips may have given humans an advantage. Your fingerprints are not random decorations on your skin. They are part of a larger system called friction ridges. Tiny raised lines that cover the fingertips and parts of the palms and feet. When you press your finger against an object, these ridges change the way your skin interacts with the surface. They can help you maintain grip and control, especially when your hands are moving or touching something delicate. But there is an even stranger detail. Your fingerprints begin developing before you are born. While you are still inside the womb, the skin on your fingertips starts forming unique patterns. These patterns are influenced by genetics, but also by tiny environmental differences during development, including the position of your fingers, pressure inside the womb, and the movement of the developing fetus. That is why even identical twins, who share almost all of their DNA, do not have exactly the same fingerprints. Their genetic instructions may be nearly identical, but the tiny conditions surrounding their development are never perfectly identical. And this means something incredible. Your fingerprints are not simply inherited like your eye color. They are partly shaped by the story of how you developed before you were even born. But if fingerprints are so useful, why do they look so different from person to person? Some people have loops, some have whorls, and others have arches. Every pattern has its own tiny details, and those details become so unique that scientists can use fingerprints to distinguish one person from another. Yet humans are not the only animals with friction ridges. Some primates also have them, and certain animals have similar structures on their paws. This suggests that the story of fingerprints is much older than modern humans. Our ancestors inherited a useful biological feature from earlier branches of the evolutionary tree, and over millions of years that feature remained because it continued to help the hands perform one of their most important jobs: controlling objects and interacting with the world. But here is where the mystery gets even deeper. If fingerprints are mainly about grip, why does every single person have a completely different pattern? Why didn't evolution simply create one perfect fingerprint and give it to everyone? And the answer takes us into one of the strangest facts about the human body. Your fingerprints are unique, but evolution did not necessarily create them to make you unique. Their individuality may simply be the result of how human development works. Tiny differences during the formation of your fingers create patterns that can never be perfectly repeated. And that accidental uniqueness eventually became one of the most powerful identification systems humans have ever discovered. Long before anyone knew what DNA was, your fingertips were already carrying a permanent signature. But fingerprints are not only about grip. There is another strange possibility, one that scientists have studied for a long time. The tiny ridges on your fingertips may also help you sense the world around you. Your fingers contain thousands of sensitive nerve endings, and the ridges can interact with surfaces in a way that helps your nervous system detect tiny changes in texture and movement. When you slide your fingertip across wood, stone, fabric, or metal, your brain receives a constant stream of information. Your fingerprints may help create the physical conditions needed for those signals to be detected clearly. Think about how easily you can tell the difference between glass and rough stone without looking at them. Your eyes are not doing the work. Your fingertips are. They are constantly measuring the world through pressure, vibration, temperature, and texture. And this ability would have been incredibly useful to ancient humans. Imagine living without modern tools, lights, or machines. Your hands were your instruments. You used them to make stone tools, prepare food, climb, build shelters, collect plants, and handle objects in complete darkness. Being able to feel small differences could mean the difference between finding something useful and getting injured. But there is another fascinating question. Why do fingerprints remain with you for your entire life? Your skin constantly grows and sheds, yet the basic pattern of your fingerprints stays almost unchanged. The reason is that the pattern is formed deep within the developing skin, so as the outer layers of skin grow and replace themselves, the underlying structure continues producing the same basic ridges. You can scrape the surface of your skin, and eventually your fingerprint pattern usually returns. It is almost like your fingertips contain a biological blueprint that keeps rebuilding the same design again and again. This is also why fingerprints became so valuable to humans long after evolution had already created them. Scientists eventually realized that these patterns could be used to identify individuals. Ancient humans obviously had no idea this would happen. They were simply using their hands to survive. But thousands of generations later, those same patterns became a tool for solving crimes, identifying people, unlocking phones, securing buildings, and proving who someone is. One of the most remarkable things about fingerprints is that they can survive even when other evidence disappears. A person can leave behind a tiny invisible trace simply by touching an object. Oils and sweat from the skin can transfer parts of the fingerprint pattern onto a surface. With the right technology, investigators can sometimes recover those patterns and connect an object to a person. Suddenly, something that evolved millions of years ago became a modern forensic tool. But fingerprints are still more mysterious than that. Scientists continue to study exactly why the patterns develop the way they do, and how genetics and conditions inside the womb interact to create them. We understand a lot about fingerprints, but we still cannot predict the exact pattern a person will have before it forms. That means the pattern on your finger is partly written by your genes and partly shaped by tiny events during your earliest development. And that is an extraordinary idea. Before you had a name, before you had memories, before you ever opened your eyes and saw the world, your fingertips were already becoming uniquely yours. But perhaps the most surprising part of the story is what happens when we compare humans with other primates. The fact that similar friction ridges appear in other species suggests that this system was not invented for modern human technology. It existed long before fingerprints became signatures. Evolution did not know that one day humans would use these patterns to unlock smartphones or identify suspects. It simply preserved a structure that helped hands work effectively. The rest was something humans discovered much later. And this is where fingerprints reveal something bigger about evolution itself. Sometimes nature does not create a feature for the purpose we eventually give it. A structure can evolve for one reason and later become useful in a completely different way. Our ancestors needed hands that could grip, feel, and manipulate the world. Millions of years later, we turned those same hands into tools for identification and technology. Your fingerprint was never designed to tell the world who you are. It simply became one of the most reliable ways for the world to recognize you. And perhaps this is the strangest thing about fingerprints. Something so small, something you barely notice, has been following you since before you were born. You can change your hairstyle, your clothes, your voice, even your appearance, but the basic pattern on your fingertips remains with you. It is one of the quietest physical signatures your body carries. And unlike a photograph or a name, it does not need to be written down for you to leave it behind. Every time you touch a glass, a phone, a door handle, a table, or another smooth surface, your fingers can leave a tiny trace of yourself behind. That means your hands are constantly interacting with the world, recording contact without you even realizing it. But the real story of fingerprints goes much deeper than identification. They are a reminder that the human body is filled with features that existed long before we understood what they were for. Our ancestors did not know about forensic science. They did not know about smartphones, passwords, or biometric security. They simply needed hands that could grip, feel, climb, hunt, build, and create. Evolution shaped those hands over countless generations, and fingerprints became part of that incredible system. Today, we look at those patterns and see identity. Scientists look at them and see development, biology, evolution, and clues about how the human body forms. And maybe that is what makes fingerprints so fascinating. They are not just lines on your skin. They are a tiny record of your development, a feature inherited from ancient ancestors, and a biological signature that stays with you for life. The next time you look at your fingertips, take a closer look. Those tiny ridges may seem completely ordinary, but they represent millions of years of evolution. They helped our ancestors interact with a dangerous and unpredictable world, and eventually they became one of the most powerful ways modern humans can recognize one another. Nature never knew we would use them this way. Evolution was simply solving a problem one generation at a time. And somehow, that solution became part of what makes every human being different. So the next time your phone unlocks just because you touch the screen, remember what is actually happening. You are using a biological pattern that began forming before you were born, shaped by genetics and tiny events inside the womb, carried through your entire life, and passed down through an evolutionary history that stretches far beyond modern civilization. Your fingerprint is not just an ID. It is a tiny piece of your evolutionary story. And maybe that is the most incredible thing about the human body. Sometimes the greatest mysteries are not hidden somewhere deep in space or buried beneath ancient ruins. Sometimes they are sitting right at the end of your fingers, waiting for you to notice them.